Femi Femo Okoma is here.
Thank you, Rufai. Good morning.
Morning, Femi.
Good morning,
Good morning,
Ayo.
Adefemi.
Good morning, Professor Killer.
Good morning.
Hope everybody's doing well. Hope you all had a good weekend.
Yes, we did.
Good. All right, team. Well, let me tell you about what is happening around the world. Germany's opposition conservatives, the Christian Democratic Union, the CDU, have won the national election, confirming leader Friedrich Merz as the next chancellor. Now, far-right Alternative for Deutschland, the AfD, came in second with a record 20.8% of the vote. It is its best ever result. Now, despite this, celebrations were relatively calm as they had expected a far higher result. At 83% turnout, this is the highest turnout since before the German Republic was created after the Second World War. But the CDU have fallen short of the 30% vote share target. Now, German political parties are expected to form a coalition in order to form an absolute majority in the Bundestag and govern. Now, Markus Söder, who's the premier of Germany's Bavaria state and the leader of the CSU party, which is the CDU's sister organization, they say that he has no hope a government could work with the Greens, especially since the two parties disagree on how best to handle immigration. Now, Merz has ruled out working with the AfD also. There is a taboo or somewhat of a firewall preventing mainstream parties in Germany from operating with the far right. But his most likely partner, the Social Democrats, have suffered their worst ever result with 16.4% of the vote. It's very, very interesting times ahead for German politics. It'll be interesting to see what shape this coalition takes. And then moving on to Ukraine, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says that he would be willing to resign from his post in exchange for lasting peace in Ukraine and or NATO membership. Now, he made this offer at a press conference in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, on Sunday. Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the ensuing war has been going on for 3 years. Today is actually the third anniversary. Zelenskyy says that Russia launched 267 strike drones into Ukraine overnight on Saturday alone, more than any other single attack of this war over the course of 3 years. Now, following a US-led effort to negotiate a ceasefire, Zelenskyy fears that Trump's involvement would result in lost territory for Ukraine. US officials have asserted that the Ukrainian leader would be involved if and when peace talks actually start. And in response to Trump calling him a dictator last week, Zelenskyy had this to say. He says that I am the elected president by 73% of the Ukrainian people. After the martial law, there will be elections. Perhaps he will say something good about me. It is more important what Ukrainians think about me. And then finally, Pope Francis is still in critical condition, but has not had any further respiratory crises, according to the Vatican. The 88-year-old leader of the Catholic Church was reportedly in hospital, has been in hospital, has remained there for a week for a lung infection. Now, Pope Francis has also received blood transfusions following tests that indicated a condition associated with anemia, and doctors expect that he will remain hospitalized throughout this week. I mean, just starting with the Pope there, we do obviously wish him a very speedy recovery, but it does seem as though we're going back and forth on the severity of his illness. First, you have the Vatican saying that he's in a stable, somewhat condition. He's responding, he's talking to people around him, and then you have news reports saying that actually this is quite serious, that he remains in a critical condition, and they foresee him staying in hospital for this week. Those are your stories. Professor Killer.
Well, I'm sure the whole world is praying for the Pope. Who knows? Maybe my own little prayer might just make the difference. So I'll add that to the prayer for the Pope now. And but I think the case is very serious. Otherwise, they won't be spinning it. Normally, it's not in a good shape. Europe, Germany, that is, and Ukraine. Europe is veering towards the right. There's something dangerous going on, and it is happening because the left has really lost focus. They have gone from something that was legitimate and substantial, and they're falling into the trap of living substance and fighting for form. They have left the bread and butter issue that affects a lot of their voters, and they've gone to, what we used to call the champagne socialism, gone to issues that do not affect the life of majority. The left in Europe and across the world generally, the part of the world that has ideology and idea, They have gone to something that affects a minority, not majority anymore, and that is telling on them and their voters. My appeal for Europe not to fall into this possible dark age is actually to the right, to the moderate, substantial right that is not a fringe. So the true Conservative Party in England needs to come out. The CDU in Germany has to come out. The center right, or in Italy, needs to come out, across Europe. The real liberal, conservative, committed to democracy, to individual liberty, has to come out in Europe and America to form a coalition that is center, maybe looking right, maybe looking left, preferably for me looking right, but that's what needs to come out. What we're seeing in Germany today is not something that even a Thatcher would have embraced. It's definitely not something that a Kenneth Clark would embrace. So it's a very strange thing, and they need to get up. For Ukraine, Trump is acting as if the war is over. And what Trump is doing is that he believes that Russia has won the war, and he's talking to the winners. A few years ago, when this thing started, and some people like myself, felt there was no point encouraging Ukraine to go to war, that we should quickly go for peace because it was a battle they could not win at all. Some people were accusing us of cynicism and not defending sovereignty. Well, I retain my right that every life matters to me. Rather than fight a war that people will lose their lives, I will go for peace, even if the peace is humiliating.
All right, okay. For Zelenskyy, I think it's also important to mention that it almost seems like President Donald Trump is asking them to pay back all the support that the United States has given to Ukraine since the war started. And what's in contention are the precious minerals in Ukraine. And what Zelenskyy is saying that he's hoping that he could rethink that, because that would mean hundreds, generations of Ukrainians having to pay back for that. So in addition to all the challenges he's facing, and maybe that's why he's now made the decision that, okay, you know what, in order to save my country and, as the hero in this story, I'd rather step down, but allow us to join NATO. Now, that is the big factor in this. It's almost as if, I don't know, he doesn't intend to step down because Russia would not agree to that kind of deal. Yes. Meaning that they would not reach an agreement. And so you wonder how and when this is going to end, especially since Trump as mediator seems to be taken aside. Right. And, that includes asking them to pay back, because if they're unable to pay back, it means the U.S. cannot continue to support them. Correct. He's asked a big question around, why are you not doing the same or giving the same treatment to Israel, to the UAE and other countries that the US has supported? Why Ukraine? So it's an interesting way to mediate in this matter, but I don't know how this is going to end, because I doubt it very much. One of the main the biggest bone of contention is joining NATO. And he's saying that he would resign just, part of the deal. They should, align with NATO. So I don't see where the end, how the end is going to be in sight very quickly, except Trump comes in this week with even stiffer measures, because he's continuing to keep the positive message that we're going to end this war soon, we're going to end this war soon. I don't know how. Now, with regards to the Pope, very sad news, 88 years old. Interestingly, at 12, at the age of 21, he had part of his lung removed. He had an illness, so he's always dealt with breathing issues. He had bronchitis in 2023 where he was in hospital for a few days. So it's not the first time. And in fact, having lived to 88 is a good sign, but he's always had that, issue with the lungs. And of course, for a beloved figure in the Catholic Church, no one wants him to die. You know how they say, no matter how old your father is, you don't want to say goodbye to him. So there are people in the Vatican who have left prayers, dropped prayers at the foot of Pope John Paul II, and perhaps to pray for him to survive. I think something else is succession. Yes. So with the Catholic Church, unlike if he were like a president or a governor, when he's out unable to perform his duties, whether he's in hospital ill, there might be someone who can step into his shoes. There's no provision for that, when it comes to that. So maybe that might also come into question as to whether to review that. He said that, they're saying that he's in critical condition, but he's still stable. He didn't do the Angelus prayer yesterday, second Sunday in a row. So we're watching people. In fact, some people have said to put out fake news that he's passed, he's dead, as we understand that things like this would attract. Yes. But like Professor Killer said, they've asked for prayers. He himself, through his X page, has asked for prayers. And I believe the world is praying, especially the Catholic family.
I mean, for the Pope, we pray for healing, Norabiete Pauna, like Pope John Paul would say, be not afraid. But also, there's another part of us that says, through medical analysis, the end might be coming because it's beginning to have bouts of mild kidney failure.
Yeah.
And some people say the organs are beginning to, whatever it is, give way or thereabout. It's a sequence. But let's just pray and hope. There is nothing God cannot do at a time like this. So we continue to pray for the Holy Father. We pray for healing. And yes, you talked about succession. It's going to be a big fight between the two big wings, the conservative wing of the church and the liberal wing. A lot of people felt Pope Francis was too liberal, But a lot of people don't also know him well. His liberalism came from the days of the military junta in Argentina, where he couldn't stand for his compatriots even more. And he was ostracized from the church for so many years. And he learned compassion. And that, changed his mentality. So there's a lot that needs to be learned about him. Moving forward to Zelenskyy and Ukraine. Yes, Zelenskyy says he's going to leave to be able to join NATO. They're not going to join NATO anytime soon. NATO is going to drag them because they know if they join NATO, it's going to be a fight even bigger. It's going to escalate. But Trump that wants minerals, 500 billion what? Hope he knows that most of those minerals are already in the Russian territory that have been occupied already, over 300 billion of them. He wants 500 billion worth of minerals from a total mineral deposit of about 14.7 trillion in Ukraine. And when you look at it, there's something called the military-industrial complex in America that has also been emboldened because of the war. Most of the over 150 billion that America has given to Ukraine all this while did not directly go to Ukraine. Yes. Some of them went to Raytheon, they went to Lockheed Martins, those that produce the Patriot missiles and the likes.
Yes.
So America also made from it. Yes, I know America normally will do deals like they did in the Gulf War with Kuwait and all of that. But is what they're asking for not a little bit too much? When they can also gain geopolitical stability at a point in time like this? And for Professor Killer, you were talking about the point. I think it was a good one to have stood with Ukraine and fought. Yeah, we know Ukraine was not going to beat the might of Russia. But they dealt Russia. This was the same Russia that we thought in 2 weeks was going to obliterate Ukraine. But it's 3 years running. Yeah. How were we supposed to know that Putin's army was not this strong if you are not fighting?
If not for this.
Because the analogy has always been about like Neville Chamberlain. When Neville Chamberlain said, give Hitler Sudetenland in the 1930s. And he went on to take the appeasement. You can't keep appeasing people, honestly.
We will pick this back
The last point,
yes,
he will have to do a deal. Merz will have to do a deal.
In Germany.
Either he does a deal with the leftist Lenke party that got close to 8% of the polls and all of that, but he doesn't want the alternative for Deutschland because they're very right. Yes. I know what you're looking at me this time, so I won't analyze further.
No, but I'm with you. We will come back to talk about Russia and Ukraine actually towards the end of our newspaper review. But let's take a look at our Nigerian papers. Start with the front page of This Day. And This Day does leave with more lines out of Ibrahim Babangida's memoir. Its headline depicts the former military president sharing one of the reasons he led the overthrow of General Muhammadu Buhari as head of state back in 1985 was because of Buhari's holier-than-thou posturing. IBB also alleged that Buhari spied on his phone calls, among other reasons for the coup. Now, Babangida was chief of army staff to Buhari, who also had ousted Shehu Shagari's civilian government in the December 31st, 1983 coup. So lots of lines coming out of the book there. The New Telegraph's headline says, don't turn Osun into the wild, wild west. Or your state governor, Seyi Makinde of the PDP, warns the APC. Now, he was speaking at the swearing ceremony of newly elected local government chairman in Osun. That's where he made those comments. Let's take a look at the front page of The Punch. The Punch leads with the APC condemning the immediate past governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, as reports emerge that the former Federal Capital Territory minister was rallying northern leaders against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's re-election ahead of 2027. The APC National Secretary Ajibola Bashiru accused El-Rufai of stoking ethnic agendas over his failure to get a cabinet appointment in this administration. The Guardian. Let's take a look at the bottom of the page of The Guardian, and it says that there's a story that essentially users in Lagos and Ogun should anticipate poor telephone service as Akon which is the leading association of telecoms companies in Nigeria, says that it has been informed that Nupeng Ptd has embarked on a strike action now effective this morning in protest of the persistent harassment of tanker and petroleum product drivers by police officers in Lagos State. Consequently, all truck loading operations have been suspended indefinitely pending further notice. Naturally, the ongoing strike will disrupt the diesel supply to base stations in Lagos and Ogun states, causing significant concern as numerous telecom sites are now critically low on diesel, which threatens service disruptions. The Tribune reports that more than 600,000 jobs are at risk over proposed taxes on the free trade zone. $200 billion in foreign investment may leave Nigeria, according to the Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture. The Daily Independent reports that some visa applicants to South Africa from Nigeria are accusing the South African embassy in Nigeria of corrupt practices and indiscriminate denial of visas. Some of these applicants also allege that the embassy in the country, through its agents, demand for unreceipted 1.2 million naira before they can even be issued an entry visa to South Africa. What a shame. And then finally, as I said, the Independent in the United Kingdom dedicates its back page to the 3rd anniversary of the war in Ukraine, counting the true cost of Putin's invasion, which includes 12,654 dead civilians, including 669 children, as well as the £445 million in aid raised for Ukraine by the Disasters Emergency Committee. So a lot of stories in our newspapers there in Nigeria.
So let me just use it to talk about Germany and I'll link to Ukraine.
Sure.
Maybe that's what I'll talk about in the newspaper. So as I was saying, he has to do a deal. He will not do a deal with the Alternative for Deutschland, obviously because they're very right-wing. But the truth is, Europe should also watch it. In fact, I'm not going to say Europe should watch it because Europe is already right-wing. Let's not deceive ourselves. Marie Le Pen holding sway, her party holding sway in France. Now this Alice Wendell getting about 20% of the votes on for Deutschland. So probably, who will he probably do a business with? Maybe with the Free Democrats that are pro-business. They didn't do as well as in the last election.
Seats, yeah.
Probably maybe Die Linke, maybe the leftist party is what he'll be able to do a deal. But he needs to get, but ideologies are very far apart. So it's a big one for, it's a cul-de-sac for him. But whatever he does, whatever, a coalition, maybe the Kenyan coalition, someone predicted, or it was the traffic light coalition like in the last time, whatever it is, one thing that you can definitely agree on, as the German politicians, the fact that they all agree on the Ukrainian issue.
Yeah.
In fact, he was one of the first people, Frederick Mears, to go see Zelenskyy in Ukraine before Olaf Scholz. They did make that trip. And they're also talking about, okay, how can they give more weapons and more armament? And you can see the cost of the war in Ukraine. It's a very debilitating war. No one wants to fight that war. But the truth is, if you also go and read Putin's 5,000-word article, you will see that Putin had imperial ambitions.
Yes, from the
beginning. Even since the day that the wall did fall, he was a KGB officer in Germany. He had imperial ambitions. And if he takes this, then he might go one step further. And in this settlement, with Trump overseeing today, he might get more concession on land out of Ukraine, which is going to be a problem.
All
right, very quickly, back home here in Nigeria, look at two stories for me. One is the South African story, and the second, that's in the Daily Independent, and the second is the poor service anticipated in Lagos and Ogun State. And I say that, let me say the latter. I say that because I've consistently talked about poor service. I don't even think we need further disruptions in the state of service. And so I'd like to ask where we are with the NCC and regulation, especially this deal that they said they had for a 50% hike in tariffs to also ensure better services for subscribers.
This is it.
You know, I'm hoping that we can really resolve that, because we often talk about poor service, we talk about how people are spending money on what is actually not. And we see that most of these, providers have taken the opportunity to increase their tariff without a commensurate increase in services, which is sad.
Well, I think unions of all kind need to please learn to know that strike is a nuclear button. If the police is impeding their trucks of moving, let them make a formal complaint. Let them come to a rise and make an interview and say, dear police commissioner, warn your guys to stop moving. They don't need to go to strike because of that, because this strike can create chaos. I think we need to learn that. I stop at that.
Agreed.
Well, Thank you so much, Adefemi. We're out of time. I said I was going to talk about the South African thing, but we're out of time. Yes. But I'm sure that the story speaks for itself.
Definitely.
And we need to really find a solution to this consistent ripping off of Nigerians when it comes to visas, not just from South Africa, but other countries as well.